I used to work in the oceanographic branch of NASA. Not many people even know that we had one. Most think it's all space, but for a while, some of us were tasked with deep-sea research. There is an overlap in the technology used in both spaces: pressure environments, life support systems, autonomous robotics. Same problems, different direction. Both barely explored and could hold fascinating discoveries. You get the picture. The ocean is still the least explored terrain that we've got. You have probably heard that Mariana Trench is the deepest point. It's not really. There are cave systems down there, massive ones, that aren't publicly mapped. Some go miles deeper than Challenger Deep. We don't have the submersibles to reach the bottom of them yet. At least, not the kind that come back. Anyway, this was a few years ago. We were brought in on a joint operation with a private energy firm. Oil rig out in the Indian Ocean had reported structural damage to one of its deep-set anchors. No quake, no known underwater landslides, just twisted sheared metal about 12,000 feet down. They sent a few ROVs, but they did not find much. The company pushed for a manned dive. They said they needed to know if their infrastructure was compromised. My team was overseeing the biology side. This is standard protocol if something unknown is involved. We were not expecting much. Maybe a new species of crab or something mundane like that. A boring report. 3 divers went down in a DSRV. That's a deep submergence rescue vehicle for those who do not know. They were self-contained. The plan was for 2 to exit and inspect the damaged sections, and for the other one to stay in the pod. They were equipped with body cams, oxygen reserves, and handheld sonar. All standard gear. At first, the footage was uneventful. Poor visibility due to sediment clouds. They reached the damaged site about 20 minutes in. That is when things started to go sideways. First diver reports something odd about the struts. Clean shears. Not corrosion and not pressure stress. Said it looked like something cut the steel. We paused playback, took stills, and managed to confirm it later on. Whatever hit the rig had precision. Then something moved behind them. Not a shadow or anything super prominent, just a shift in the water. The onboard sonar pings once and then shorts out. The cameras show it before the lights cut out. Blue-black skin, mottled, really hard to make out in low light. Tentacles, more than 2. Too big to be anything documented. Not a squid, not a giant octopus. This thing was organized. Second diver tries to back away. You can hear the panic starting in his voice. He says something about suction cups, then his mic cuts out completely. The lights flicker back on, but just briefly. One of the arms is pulling at his fins. The other is wrapped around his tank. It's deliberate. The creature knows what it is doing. It knows exactly what to aim for. One diver screams. It is garbled, but the tone is unmistakable. Pure terror. By the time the DSRV pilot activates the emergency recall, the 2 outside divers are already gone. One made it back. He said one of them used bioluminescent flashes to blind him. Another creature grabbed the second diver from behind and crushed his rebreather. The guy who survived only did so by activating a flare, which is not standard issue. It scared them off temporarily. It bought him just enough time to get back into the pod and trigger the ascent. We pulled him out 2 hours later. He was hypoxic, borderline shock. He did not make eye contact with any of us for days. NASA filed the report. The company shut down the dive project within the week. Internal review called it equipment failure. We were told not to speak to press or external agencies. I didn't push it. None of us did, but the recordings, what little we salvaged, they were not faked. I know what I saw, and I know what that thing was doing. It wasn't hunting, it was probing, testing, like it had seen us before. This one was a couple months later after the dive project got shut down. I got pulled onto something else. Black Site project. Not NASA-led specifically, but we were there for the biology again. There was definitely ties to NASA, just not any you could publicly trace. That is beside the point, I suppose. It was supposed to be routine. Assist in analysis of recovered shipwreck data off the coast of Brazil. naval asset, a historical interest. Turns out, the ship was the USS Cyclops. Disappeared in 1918. No distress call, and no debris. You have probably heard of it if you've ever looked into naval disappearances. One of the biggest unsolved losses in US Navy history. Over 300 crew never found a trace until now. The wreck was located at an extreme depth of over 16,000 feet. Way deeper than the trench it was supposed to be sailing over. We weren't told how it was found. When we arrived, they already had some of the recovered materials in a pressure-sealed facility. Mostly rusted junk. Hull fragments, navigation tools, and a ballast. Things like that. But the important piece was a section of the bridge log. Water damaged, but partially legible. We were amazed any of it had survived at all. It's incredibly unlikely, but there are records of other things surviving for years under the water in shipwrecks. We went through it, page by page. One entry caught everyone off guard. Dated 4 days before the ship went missing. Describes an unidentified biological contact shadowing the vessel at night. Multiple entities. Description was vague, but one detail stuck out to us. The inked note that read, like squids, but wrong. Another entry describes a night attack. Massive hull damage from below. Crew reporting tentacles breaching the deck railings. Then, total silence. Next few pages are smudged beyond recovery. No formal conclusion. We thought it might be embellished, sailors in distress, or maybe hallucinations, but then we reviewed the ROV footage of the wreck. Main hull had a breach on the underside. Not from explosives and not a pressure implosion. Something tore through the steel plating. Edges bent inward like claws or tools, and it was from beneath. Most telling though were the lifeboats. They were still intact, completely untouched, but there were scratch marks on the inside rails, deep ones, and handprints too. Whatever hit that ship did not give anyone the time to launch, or it managed to pull them straight back in after they did. One of the biologists on site brought up a theory. Said it might be the same cephalopods from Montessera. Not a new species, but an old one. Maybe one we'd only just started noticing because we were finally going deep enough. Said they'd evolved alongside us, learned around us, that maybe they had seen ships for generations. But this was not some accident of proximity. These events involving Montessera and Cyclops, they were not random. Both occurred at extreme depths, with no natural predators in the sea. Both involve coordinated, high-intelligence behavior, and both ended in total loss, except for the single survivor from Montessera. That diver, by the way, disappeared not long after. He just packed up, with no forwarding address. Family says they have not heard from him since. NASA shut our division down the following fiscal quarter. Most of the team got transferred to unrelated projects. A few left entirely, with no reason given. Just an internal memo that said, strategic pivot towards space-based exploration priorities. I have one more from before the shutdown that I wasn't really sure about sharing, but I suppose I may as well at this point. We were about 19 miles east of Raoul Island on a rented Norwegian vessel when we dropped the capsule. Third trial of the month. The water was calm, overcast sky, light wind. Standard deployment. Capsule was designed to free fall to depth, rest on the sea floor for 12 hours, then jettison ballast and ascend. No propulsion, no signal beacons, only a low frequency ping to help us locate it on return. It had one 4K low-light optical camera, 3 hydrophones, a small biological sampler, and a magnetic anomaly detector, which had been giving us false positives on previous dives. We monitored the descent. At about 6,000 meters, visual was already mostly gone. We expected that. The thermocline had been pretty steep, and we were getting audio artifacts from turbulence above. Pretty normal. At 7,000 meters, it pinged nominal. We logged it, then went about our day. 9 hours in, we started picking up anomalies. Not dramatic, just strange. The hydrophones recorded what sounded like metallic creaks, distant thuds, and something like sand or grit sliding across the capsule's casing. We initially thought it might have settled onto an unstable ledge. Then the ping shifted. It started returning out of sync. We thought it was a ballast issue at first, but then it stopped altogether. No signal, no ping, nothing. We prepared a backup capsule to deploy a locator. Figured maybe DE3 had just shifted position and its antenna was damaged. Then, 13 hours after initial drop, the original signal returned. It returned suddenly and with perfect strength. That should not have been possible. The feed came back online and the visual came with it. What we saw did not make sense. The camera was angled up. That was already wrong. It was mounted front-facing, not upward. The field of view was murky, heavy particulates, but illuminated by the capsule's low-beam LEDs. Then something passed across the frame. Not swam, it passed. It had structure, geometry, corners. There are no corners at the bottom of the ocean. It looked like part of a man-made surface, maybe pitted steel or something like that, but it was heavily encrusted, covered entirely in marine growth I did not recognize. One of the junior researchers said it looked like a hull. I didn't agree. I've seen wrecks. This was not that. And then we saw a face. It wasn't a face in the literal sense. No eyes, no nose, nothing human. But the shape, the symmetry, the slow movement toward the lens. It triggered every pattern recognition reflex in us. Something was looking. It stayed for 7 seconds. Then the camera went black. No signal again. We recovered the capsule 18 hours later. It had jettisoned ballast on schedule, drifted up in silence, and bobbed at the surface 2 kilometers from the drop point. It was intact. We opened it on deck. Inside, the camera was cracked. There were scratches, long, smooth gouges on the titanium shell. Not like from rock, more like something with regular spacing. The biological sampler contained organic residue. The usual krill detritus, plus something else. Black, fibrous tissue. No match in the database. Not fungal, and not vertebrate. It was wrong. The spectrograph read it as carbon-based, but the chain structures were unstable, almost melted. NASA shut the test line down within a week. One of the interns on that deployment left entirely. Said she could not sleep. Said she kept dreaming in static, whatever that means. Last one, I mean it this time. There was a project called Saros. Not public. Internally, it stood for Subaquatic Remote Observation System, though I've heard of a few different definitions over the years. Most of the hardware was NASA JPL, but the budget came from an alphabet soup of other agencies. We weren't told who signed off on it. We were just told what to build. The design brief was clear. Long duration seafloor surveillance, no tethers, full black box capability, and no EM leakage. It had to disappear from the world and watch silently for a minimum of 2 years. They gave us the coordinates, South Pacific. Nowhere near any trench, ridge, or any other known anomaly. Just empty blue on the map. Deployment was classified. Half our team was not allowed near the ship. I went only because I was on the systems check team. We dropped Saros into a calm sea under full overcast. No fanfare and no launch sequence. It just sank. We weren't supposed to hear anything back for months. 3 weeks later, I was pulled into a side lab in Building 31. Not a conference room, not a logged or scheduled thing. Just a senior guy I didn't know, one engineer from the Saros nav team, and 2 people who never ever gave me their names. They had footage. The first clip was static, just long unbroken shots of seafloor, sparse particulates drifting past. Occasionally, something like sediment moving in the distance. Very normal. But then it cut to timestamp 0312-4609. Something flickered across the screen. It was slow and purposeful. Like something crawling but not with limbs. More like dragging itself across the camera's field of view. Just at the edge of visibility. Not an animal, it was much too angular. They enhanced the frame and showed it again. It looked like a piece of machinery. Very old and covered in corrosion. But it was moving. There was no propulsion. It moved like a crab, but far too heavy. Left impressions in the silt as it passed. Straight lines. No erratic movement like regular wildlife. It stopped in front of the Saros lens and sat there for 6 hours, Then, one by one, its lights came on. 5 small red points, spaced in a row, equidistant from each other, all pointed directly into the camera. There was no power source that we could detect, no thermal charge and no emissions, just that light. Then the audio kicked in. Saros was supposed to run passive sonar 24/7, but what came through was not sonar. It was garbled and slow and modulated like old tape. The arguments over what the sound was probably are still going on right now. Some of the team thought it sounded like speech. To me, I couldn't really hear much, but maybe it was my old ears failing me. They said it sounded like someone saying, "You are not the first," and then silence. But that seems a little too unbelievable to me personally. There is nothing to suggest anything in the ocean could transmit a signal like that, let alone mimic human speech perfectly, and of all languages, English. Weird creatures and erratic behavior I can buy, but this is where I draw the line and don't indulge in fantasy. I'm only sharing it here because I know you guys like this kind of stuff. Anyway, after we heard whatever it was, they just told us we had not seen it, that the footage was being transferred, that Saros was lost during the descent, that if we mentioned this at all, we would be in violation of national security protocols. All I can say on the matter is that machine, whatever it was not built by anything we've ever catalogued. Hey, I hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you do and you want to hear more, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment down below, as it lets the algorithm know that you like my content and it promotes it to more people. My goal for the channel is to hit 50,000 subscribers, and we're closing in fast, so thank you, and back to the stories. I was stationed with the 405th Army Field Support Brigade rotating through Poland. There is a lot of joint operations out there, NATO exercises, vehicle recovery drills, equipment transfers, the works. Most of it runs really smoothly, but every now and then they throw you a curveball in the name of field conditioning. That is how I ended up on a solo survival rotation in the deep Polish backwoods. The exercise was simple on paper. Navigate from one checkpoint to another. No GPS, just a compass, a map, and your own 2 damn feet. The final destination was an old, decommissioned American camp way out west, near the Czech border. It had been used for Cold War drills and, later, NATO joint training, but it had not seen any real action in years. I was supposed to hike in, spend 2 nights alone, log my observations, then hike to the next checkpoint where I would meet a Polish liaison. After that, rinse and repeat for the next guy. The hike wasn't bad. The terrain was thick with pine and birch, and a heavy mist threaded through the trees like something out of a storybook. But the deeper I went, the quieter it got. No wind, no bugs, just the sound of my boots and wet leaves. Occasionally a bird call, but it always stopped too quickly, like something was interrupting it. When I reached the camp, it felt like I had not seen another human being in years. The place was skeletal. Empty tents, collapsed cots, a few moldy MRE packets half buried in the mud. No lights, no sound, just me in the forest and whatever was hiding in it. I shrugged it off. I had done worse. It was just an old camp in an old forest. Nothing to be afraid of. Not yet. That first night was cold. Not freezing, but the kind of chill that gets into your boots and makes your skin feel like paper. I set up my bivvy sack under an old shelter frame. The fire pit had collapsed, so I used a burner and ate chili mac that tasted like salted paste. I swept the area just to stay sharp. The tents were still staked down, but rotting. Someone had left a stack of field manuals sealed in plastic. The whole place felt like it had been packed up in a rush. I think I laid down around 2200, but I never really slept. At first, it was just the wind, or what I thought was the wind. Then I started hearing footsteps in the tree line. Slow, deliberate, too steady for an animal. I sat up and waited. The sound stopped. Then I heard whispering. A single voice. I could not make out the words. I told myself it was just nerves. When you're alone that long, your brain fills in the silence. I did not bother logging it. I stayed awake until the sky turned their early morning Polish gray and let myself breathe again. The second day was worse. I kept busy, logging coordinates, practicing shelter techniques, running drills just to stay sane. But I kept thinking I was seeing people. Not clearly, just shapes, moving through the mist. Always the same dark silhouettes, walking parallel to me, too far to call out to, too uniform in their movement, like they were on patrol. By late afternoon, I was hearing the voices again. Not whispers this time, actual conversation. Clear enough that I should have made out the words, but I couldn't. Like standing outside a tent while someone talks inside. You hear the rhythm, the emotion, but never the meaning. At dusk, I found something. Beneath a collapsed tent, buried in branches and canvas, was an old leather boot. Not military issue. I pulled it out. There was still a foot bone inside. A femur fragment too. I dropped it, heart pounding. I had no radio. This was a solo operation, so I did the only thing I could. I buried it, dug a hole with my e-tool, dropped it in, packed it down like it had never been disturbed. That night, I heard singing. Not music, not a radio, voices, men singing in rhythm. Not English, it was Slavic maybe. Dozens of them, rising and falling in cadence like a marching song. I lay there in my bivvy, eyes open, hand on my knife, waiting for it to stop. It didn't. It just faded with that fog that rolled in before dawn. I packed fast and skipped breakfast. The forest felt heavier now. The trees leaned in. Every step felt watched. I kept hearing twigs snap behind me, but when I turned, there was nothing there. Eventually, I reached the checkpoint. Just an old stone marker by a dry creek. A man in a Polish uniform was waiting, leaning on a stick. "You're from the American camp?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just finished the rotation. That place still get used?" He shook his head. "No, not for a long time. That area is quiet now." "I saw people out there," I told him. "Thought maybe vagrants or something." He looked at me for a long time. "You stayed there 2 nights?" he asked. I nodded. "They should not have sent you there alone," he said. "What are you talking about?" He glanced behind me into the woods. That forest during the war, it was used by the Nazis. Polish soldiers, civilians, they were kept there. Starved, shot, buried in mass graves. The location was never marked. But we know. The land knows. I could not respond. I had no words. He kept going. "Some say the soldiers still march through. If you listen at night, you can hear them singing, still waiting to go home." I just nodded and adjusted my pack and followed him down the trail. We did not speak the entire way back. I was too busy replaying the last 2 nights. Every shadow in the mist, every voice, every footstep that matched mine, until I stopped, and it didn't. I'd spent 2 nights camping in a graveyard, slept above the bones of men who never got coffins or names. When the Polish contact said the land remembers, I believed him. I remembered how it felt like the woods were watching, how the air changed, how all life fell silent once I crossed a certain line. I wanted to believe it was just isolation, stress, overactive imagination, but I know better now. When we got back, I showered, changed, and did not say a word during debrief. I skipped chow and collapsed on my cot, slept for 12 hours straight, lights on, boots still tied. The next guy scheduled for the rotation, I pulled him aside. "Take the long route," I told him. "Skip the old camp. Make something up if you have to." "What's wrong with it?" he asked. "It's a creep show," I said. He laughed, thought I was joking. I did not tell him otherwise. I have done plenty of fieldwork since, plenty of forests, plenty of solo operations, but I've never felt anything like that place ever again, and honestly, I hope I never do. I found an abandoned military base on Wikimapia, and my friend and I decided to go there. The decision was spontaneous, and we headed out in its direction at about 6 to 7 p.m. and entered the territory when it was already quite dark, although it was possible to walk normally without lighting. When we were walking along the highway to the military base, we saw 2 motorcyclists riding in its direction, and about half an hour later, they were already riding back. After another 10 minutes, they rode past us again in the direction of the military base. After about 5 minutes, we finally reached the checkpoint, walked around a bit, and went deeper into the territory. My friend was breaking into the main building, and I suggested that we first go around the territory. You never know. to which he agreed. Turning the corner of the main building, we saw an overgrown parade ground, some building in the corner of the territory, and the barracks. These motorcyclists were standing near the barracks, animatedly talking about something. We decided to stand in the bushes near the main building and just watch them. They talked for more than 5 minutes, then the voices suddenly stopped and they left the area. At the same time, one was about 3 meters ahead of the other and rode standing, constantly looking around, as if searching for something. When they left, we decided to go to the building in the corner. I stayed outside, and my friend took a flashlight from me and examined the building from the inside. As it turned out later, there was nothing interesting there. Then I suggested going to the barracks to see what these two found there. Approaching the barracks, we decided to go inside, but we heard inside as if someone was walking on the tiled floor, strewn with broken glass. The glass cracked for the first time. It was unanimously decided to not go there. We went in the direction of the main building. On the way, we decided to look at the steel, which was located between the barracks and the main building. When we were 5 to 7 meters away from the steel, we saw 2 lights flying out from behind it at great speed, resembling dimly shining white LEDs. They moved at high speed. Their height was over 2 meters from the steel to the doorway located at the end of the building. The point gave me a second crack. When we passed by the end of the building, I saw one light in the doorway where it had moved, located near the wall, at a height of about 1.5 meters. The point gave a third crack. Approaching the main entrance to the main building, we heard sounds as if someone was knocking with a hammer on a concrete slab. The sound was moving away, then approaching. When the sound began to approach, we heard the same sound of footsteps as in the barracks. The point bit through the crowbar, and without wasting a second, we ran towards the checkpoint. As we were running away, my friend turned around and saw movement in the main entrance. As he put it, like a dirty grey sheet swaying. The pic-related image contains an approximate map of the base and our route. The red arrows are our trajectory. The blue ones are the points of contact with it. The rest is labeled. What was that, Anon? Have you encountered anything similar? Here are the coordinates for the base. Bime, recently turned 19 years old. Live in a small town in Oklahoma. Always hear spooks about the state. I usually just dust it off as nothing. Sometimes my roommate will spook the fuck out of me though. One time, came home drunk without telling me. Almost shot him because I thought someone was breaking in. Always on edge with stuff like that. Fear of the unknown.jpg. This fear got worse after about 2 months. Start driving home from work, sometime around 1 AM. See a couple of black SUVs drive past me. No lights on. I think the windows were tinted, but that seems dumb to do. Drive home is about half an hour. I like to keep the radio off. Hear a loud thud from the distance. Don't bother with it. A while goes by. Pass by a house and see something glimmer from the corner of my rear view. Can't see it because too dark. Pass by another house. Make sure to look at the rear view this time. Oh fuck me. It is a black SUV with no headlights on. In a beefed up Mustang. Pedal to the floor out of there. Don't see it again when I pass by a third house. Eventually get home. Knees weak, arms are sweaty. These guys are gonna want my spaghetti. Rush to the door, grab my shotgun. Keep myself posted close to the door. Call out for my roommate. Nothing at all. Later found out he worked overtime. Occasionally peek outside my window. See one of the vans at the intersection. Absolute fear. It's slowly moving closer to my house. I can feel my heart beating out of my chest. It stops right before my house. My face won. After about 20 seconds, the car drives off. Don't see it ever again. I stayed up until around 3 AM when my roommate finally came home. Again, I almost shot his dick off. I explained everything to him, and he agrees that we should stay up for the night. Nothing has happened so far, but every so often I tremble in fear, thinking that they might come back. What do you think, Axe? One of those no witnesses situations to some spooky shit, or perhaps something else?